Hello, everyone. Welcome back to another episode of Lorebeards. Apologize for doing this on a irregular day from normal. That's my fault. I had some health issues last weekend, but we're all back in action. So we are here today to give you your normal weekly stuff. And there's quite a bit to talk about today, as there has been a lot going on in the Warhammer sphere. So without further ado, let's go ahead and get today started. But before we hop deep into the topics, let's start with introductions and stuff. So real quick, in case you're new here, I'm Loremaster of Sotek. Hello. I do streaming on Twitch and YouTube stuff about Warhammer lore and of course Total War and all that noise. We've also got my regular co-host Nathan. How you doing today, dude?
Good. For those of you who don't know me, I'm Nathan from the Great Book of Grudges, Warhammer Total War YouTuber, and tabletop, mostly gaming, which returns soon, next week. And yeah, just pretty good. Chill.
All right, and of course we've got our special guest for this week. We've got Legend of Total War. How you doing, man?
Yeah, well, thanks. Good to be here.
Awesome. So, real quick, just a reminder for everyone watching that Tale of Two Gamers is not due this week. It's this upcoming Sunday. So if you're participating in that, the theme is monsters or something that is monstrous, like a monstrous unit. Make sure you submit those before the live stream on Sunday, which will be at the usual time. And with that, I think we are good to hop into today's real topics, and we're just gonna go ahead and get this out of the way early. We're gonna go ahead and do who would win at the top rather than later on, because we're gonna be diving into Total War Warhammer and not coming up for air until we're done. So real quick, we'll kind of we will do today's verses, which one that I saw that I thought might be interesting is we had an entry of a battle of the furry sorcerers, so to speak, which is Lord Skrulk, the non Council of 13 leader of Clan Pestilence, versus Malagor, the Harbinger of Disaster. So just a quick rundown of these characters for anyone who may not be familiar with them from the and like what they're capable of, so you can kind of cast your votes as we get into discussing it. We'll start with Lord Skrulk. So for those unaware, the Skaven leader of Clan Pestilence, that of course isn't Nurglich himself, is a surprisingly good fighter. They're both wizards. Skrulk isn't quite as skilled of a wizard as Malagor is, but he's not very far behind him. They're both powerful sorcerers. But Skrulk makes up for his slight lack in magical mastery with his physical capabilities. Skrulk can only be described as a supernatural opponent, in that despite the fact he's completely blind, at least he's supposed to be, he actually could see quite well, because he stuffed 2 warpstone nuggets into his eye sockets, and somehow that worked. And because of that, he has very good reaction times. He's very fast. It's noted that he can catch flies out of the air with his bare claws that are often buzzing around him. He, of course, does have a aura of pestilence that's
Hang on a second.
Sure.
Sorry. He can catch flies out of thin air with his bear claws.
Yep.
Wouldn't they be catching them with his rat claws?
Ah.
I don't want to do this anymore.
Oh, why?
Man. So, yes, sorry, his rat claws, not his bear claws. He does have his aura of pestilence, makes him difficult to be around. He has lots of flies buzzing around, getting in people's eyes and ears and nostrils and everything, to make life horrible, make it difficult to focus on him hidden. He's a frenzied individual. Lord Skrulk is probably one of the most zealotrous of the Skaven characters, as he's one of the only Skaven characters that's actually genuine in his faith, to the extent that he ripped out his own eyeballs as a show of faith. Of course, he uses spells from the lore of Plague, which is a lore that specializes in ravaging the bodies of the enemies. It's better against enemies that have weaker constitutions, which Malagor does not necessarily fall into. And for his items, he has the Liber Bubonicus, which is that big book he carries on his back that supposedly has the name of everyone that's going to be infected by a disease and what disease they're going to be infected by and how you're going to die from it. However, bizarrely, there's a bit of a difference in translation in that the Liber Bubonicus is generally meant, as he reads from it, to infect large swaths of people. It's usually not particularly great for killing a specific individual. It's more for infecting large groups and spreading diseases that can cause a rapidly spreading illness. On the other hand, the Rod of Corruption is a one-hit kill wonder. In that if Skrulk manages to hit you with the Rod of Corruption, A, it hurts because it's a flail, so he can actually swing it very, very hard. But B, if he hits you with it, essentially, unless you are a very, very tough individual, the fumes are going to cause you to shrivel up and die instantly. That is a very, very, very powerful particular weapon. However, on the other side of things, we've got Malagor, the Dark Omen, the Crow Father. Malagor is not as skilled of a combatant as Lord Skrulk, but he is a more powerful wizard. He is more than capable of wielding the winds of magic to much, much greater efficiency than Skrulk can, though his lore of spells, of course, is the lore of the wild, traditionally, so he relies on beastman spells that are all about causing enemies to go a little crazy, or devolve into horrible monsters more than they already are, or, of course, summon beasties to assist him in battle, though he, of course, could pick from other lores like Death and Shadow if he wanted to. Beyond that, he flies, which, of course, is very, very helpful, so Malagor does dictate the role of the battle, and hopefully would make it hard for Skrulk to smack him with that nasty little staff of his. They're both kind of equally tough. Neither of them wear armor, but they are both very, very durable individuals. They're both very resistant to anything that would cause their constitution to fail them. They both can hit relatively hard, though Skrulk hits much, much harder than Malagor, but they're almost equally skilled combatants as far as pure skill is concerned. Though Skrulk is much faster, much faster. Beyond that, Malagor brings into... The only thing that really comes with him into battle is essentially that he has something known as unholy power, which is that the dark gods very much favor Malagor as kind of a dark omen of their potential, a herald of what's to come. And because of that, the winds of magic blow particularly strong around him, and he's able to wield them to even greater effect than he normally would. So he is a pretty nasty and powerful wizard, in that the more magic he utilizes, the stronger he gets. So if you don't stop him from kind of ramping up, he becomes a problem really quickly. So that's it for lining out the contestants for this week's Who Would Win. Nathan, we'll start with you. How are you feeling?
Oh, well, both characters are cool, though you know I have a soft spot for Pestilence, right? Like, it's like my favorite clan.
Who doesn't? You should get it checked, though.
But I'm going to have to say it's going to be quite tough, considering obviously Malagor being able to fly. I've never really seen his spellcasting abilities. I mean, in lore, he's represented to have beast and dark magic, isn't he?
He generally revolves around kind of that, that evil trifecta of like shadow, death, and beasts, and seems to kind of switch those out depending on the situation. I would say for like a matchup potential, I would probably it'd probably be best to assume him having somewhere in that ballpark of like Death, Shadow, and Lore of the Wilds. We'll say that he probably shouldn't be able to summon for the sake of a Who Would Win. Generally, you're not supposed to bring in outside help, but he still is a pretty powerful spellcaster in his own right. And there are some spells that could be problematic for Skrulk, particularly from like the Lore of Death.
Yeah, no summons though will kind of be a clutch against Malagor, because the Lord Plague itself is quite good. Like, obviously, it is pretty good in Total War Warhammer, and lore it's represented to be absolutely devastating. It's like dropping anthrax, and obviously on the tabletop too, it's pretty good. Like, it is my favorite go-to lore. if he can get him on the ground, I'd say Skrulk can win, but he needs to get Malagor on the ground.
Yeah. Legend, any thoughts?
Malagor wins hands down. No contest.
What's
If it's Total War Warhammer 2, look, I don't know about the tabletop stuff, but I know both characters pretty extensively. If Skrulk is not allowed to use his summons, is he allowed to use his summons?
No summons.
Okay, well that's a big disadvantage for him. So if he's disabled from using summons, you've got Malagor that's flying. He can use Enfeebling Foe. He's got way faster Winds of Magic regeneration. Also, it's way cheaper for him. So Enfeebling Foe will immediately make Skrulk weaker. Plus, he can swoop. Assuming he's allowed to swoop if he has to go into melee.
You can definitely
Also,
swoop.
another big thing about Malagor is that he causes everybody around him to lose stats. So Skrulk being Skaven would have naturally fairly low leadership. So Malagor doesn't have to outright defeat Skrulk. He just has to scare him off and rout him, which is very easy for him. Like, Malagor's got like a minus 27% leadership aura when he's fully buffed up. So
Keep in
he would
mind,
scare him away.
keep in mind that there are some changes. Like, for example, when we take all three representations, the tabletop does not match up with the lore, and the lore does not match up with the game. For example, on the tabletop, I have the claim to fame of saying that fucking Skrull killed Archaon. Like, that was my big claim to fame on the tabletop.
Scroll could be pretty nightmarish. No, but I do think he has some good points. Like even when you transfer into a lore perspective of that, Malagor is kind of a terror in the night, and being able to dictate the pace of the battle because he can literally just swoop in and bonk Skrulk on the head as many times as he needs to. Definitely
Doesn't he
is.
also have the spell Doom and Darkness?
Yeah. Traditionally,
So Enfeebling Foe, Doom and Darkness, plus his Icons of Vilification, plus something wicked this way comes. He's just debuffed to crazy.
yeah, it's very true. Skrulk would have a couple things there to defend him from like a more lore-oriented perspective of that Skrulk's Frenzy. Frenzy is interpreted very differently in Total War than its traditional forms, and that Skrulk's Frenzy would more than likely protect him against mind-altering magics like Doom and Darkness, at least until he was thoroughly defeated. But it is worth noting that that flail of his is very nasty. If Skrulk can either just get the fumes towards Malagor, or at the very least disable him enough with a pestilence spell to get him on the ground, weaken his wings enough that he falters and falls to the ground, and hit him with that flail, I honestly think it's a one-shot kill.
I just figured something out.
What?
One weave on, right? No other units, no nothing.
Yeah, one-on-one.
Skrulk needs to be grounded. Sorry, Malagor needs to be grounded. If we're going from a Total War perspective.
If Malagor's grounded, then Skrulk will probably win.
It's not from a Total War perspective necessarily. We try to do these more from a lore angle, but Malagor can fly. But
I know, but
for Malagor to hit Skrulk, I don't think Malagor would be able to kill him with a spell. So in order to win, Malagor does need to come in at least once to land a hit, and it's probably going to take more than one hit. And Skrulk is kind of a freakish nightmare once he gets busy fighting. Just because I'm kind of eager to get onto the mechanics and stuff for the day, I already ran a poll in my chat, and in my chat, Malagor won heftily. 96% of the chat voted for Malagor.
I've got 43 Skrulk, 57 Malagor.
Okay. What about you two? What are y'all's final thoughts? Legend, you sticking with Malagor?
Yeah, I'm gonna stick with Malagor.
Nathan, what do you think?
Defending Skrulk to the grave, man. Pestilence is my boys. He's got the toughest 5, doesn't he?
They both do. They're both very, very tough individuals. I mean, that's kind of the thing for me, is that if Malagor was a little less of a if Malagor was more of a armor heavy character, not a relies purely on his constitution character, I would probably lean more towards Skrulk. But I think I'm gonna go Malagor. That being able to dictate pace of the battle and being a stronger wizard is just nasty. It's nasty. If he was on the ground, though, yeah, no. Skroke is like terrifying on the ground. All right, so with that out of the way, let's go ahead and talk about all. So since the last episode of Lorebeards, which was not this past Sunday, but the one before, Creative Assembly has been dropping Total War news like it's been a lot. They've been throwing it out every which way, and one of the big things they've been doing is revealing the campaign mechanics for the some of the new races in Total War Warhammer 3. We have all the ones revealed so far, being Kislev, Cathay, and Tzeentch, which are the major factions that have kind of been revealed so far. We haven't gotten Khorne's mechanics yet. Those are presumably coming down the pipeline probably next week. But we can discuss what we do have, because, man, there is a lot to talk about. So, why don't we, Legend, which race would you like to start with?
Tzeentch. Yeah.
I expected that.
All right, so we're going
Yeah.
for Big Bird first and checking out his campaign mechanics.
Looking good. For sure.
Oh yeah. So real quick, just a brief reminder for anyone that has not read them, and I will also post this article in the chat for anyone that wants to follow along that is watching at home. Just a quick refresher of that. The big things for Tzeentch before we get into discussing them are, of course, he has a new currency system, which are called grimoires, which are essentially a unique currency he can earn through various kinds of actions. And then you could spend these grimoires primarily on a system called the Changing of the Ways, which the Changing of the Ways is 10 sets of abilities you can activate to influence factions on the campaign map. And then, of course, he has the Winds of Magic manipulation that allows him to nerf his Winds of Magic in one province in order to increase it in another. Then there are the demon-specific mechanics, which are the Tzeentch Corruption, which allows you to have unholy manifestations, which are global buffs, depending on how much corruption you have. And if you have enough corruption in a single area, you can activate cults, which allow you to build a single unique building. Then we've got his tech tree, and of course the teleportation stance. So why don't we start at the top, probably with the most fascinating thing, which is grimoires. I don't think we need to really get into, because that's just kind of a new currency. What do y'all? So how do y'all feel about Changing of the Ways?
Seems a little weak. Seems a bit underpowered. Yeah, definitely not abusable at all.
Yeah.
I can't imagine anybody complaining about this stuff at all.
Oh yeah,
Seems
no,
really balanced.
Tzeentch will be the most fair versus player versus player faction. No problems
Yeah,
whatsoever.
all the stuff there just seems pretty standard. I don't think anything seems overpowered at all. Seems good.
What's that? You have a long trade agreement with the dwarfs? Now you're at war. No more.
What's that? You've got a tier 5 settlement. That's mine now.
See, when I look at these mechanics, like the faction at war stuff, right? That's cool. It should be doable. Not for baseline Tzeentch. They should have saved that for, say, for example, the Changeling, who was known to do that, and not give it to the baseline, because that means that every single Tzeentchian faction will eventually have this. Like,
Yep.
And will the AI be able to use these mechanics as normal?
Yep.
And is the AI better?
So
And they'll get higher difficulties. They'll get cheats. So since most of them are unlocked by tech tree, if you're going up against Tzeentch, you're really going to want to drop his tech rate down.
yeah, and one thing that is worth noting for anyone that hasn't read the article is that 9 of these abilities are locked behind the tech tree. And you have to go through specific paths to get them, and some of them are more difficult to get than others. And then they also they'll also probably cost a hefty amount of grimoires. Now, whether CA is going to get the balance right on how many grimoires they should cost is a total toss-up.
Luckily, the one that they start off with is literally the weakest of their abilities, so it's fine.
Mm.
Yeah, they only start off with transfer settlement.
I think that's just what they went through, because
I can't wait to transfer Isabella from Schwarzhafen to the Chaos Wastes. It's regen farming time.
Is there...
Wait. No, they confirmed. This was confirmed in the Total War public Discord that capitals would not be able to be transferred.
Oh, okay, so there are immunities.
Yeah.
Ah, okay. Well, that makes it. I mean, it's still obscene, but
Well, you just give them a settlement that's in the set. So if they've got one settlement, because one thing that happens to the von Karsteins all the time, because they're very sought after trait and they get killed quite often, is that you just give them a settlement where they're actually going to be safe. So it's not like it's a settlement swap. You just take your settlement that owns that one faction owns and just
that's.
give it to somebody else.
I had not even thought of that.
Not a
That's a
swap.
really good point. So what Legend's saying is essentially like, if you're playing a Tzeentch and you're starting out in the Chaos Waste or the Realm of Chaos or wherever, just pick a settlement very close to you and give it to the von Karsteins. That way, the von Karstein AI will start to build armies there, and will eventually put Isabella there, and then you can run over and snipe her and get the region.
Yeah.
Because the AI will start building there because it's the AI. So
you just end up take key characters that have really good traits. Oh, Fey Enchantress, you're coming over here. Oh, let's see, Gorok, not Gorok, Krokgar, you got a good trait. You come over here. And you start giving them these really lame settlements that you just use as a sack set. You just farm them. I can milk you.
That's gonna be so nasty. House of Shouch, I do think that's likely. He puts up a point in the chat that the Tzeentch AI will probably not use all of the mechanics. There will probably be some that'll be disabled from an AI perspective, just like the Clan Eshin does not seem to use all of its mechanics. You know, I don't think any of us have ever witnessed the Eshin AI insta sniping a faction.
They can do it. They can do it. They just the thing about that one is that the player can do it way faster because they're locked behind Snitch's levels, and because the AI doesn't prioritize leveling up their legendary lords super quickly. If Clan Eshin survives to turn 250, he'll then start doing it all the time. But because Clan Eshin doesn't survive that long, usually he either gets steamrolled by Grimgor or Karaza Karak, whichever of those two survives that main war. He usually doesn't live long enough for that to occur. But if he does, he does do it.
Oh, okay.
Never seen that.
Well, I imagine you have to get quite far into the campaign in order to see it.
Yeah. Yeah, I've never personally seen him do it, but I've seen other people show him do it.
Spooky.
Wow.
Basically, you don't want Snitch getting to level 40. I mean, he can't insta snipe you, but he could insta snipe anybody with that, apart from you.
That explains a recent playthrough I had where Grimgor was really, really big and then turned into a rebellion. I thought it was just like the rebellion army beat him and confederated him, because I've heard that's a thing.
Yeah, oh no, that would have to be Snitch then.
Yeah, Snitch got him.
Christ.
At least because I don't think the Greenskin rebellions can actually confederate.
Yeah, they don't win. They don't win anyway. The AI has auto resolve bonuses versus rebellions. They almost never win. The only time that a rebellion would win is if it's against like an undefended settlement. Like they have to be massively outpowered in order to lose. So it would have to be an absolute freak occurrence.
I'm getting a red flag. 1 second. Droid of the Wolf, are you okay, mate? Like you've donated like $500 in like.
I know Droid of the Wolf. He's done this on my streams a number of times. He's just super generous. This is pretty standard. So he's done it. It's always ... and he does it in $500 in various different increments.
Right.
He's just really generous. That's all.
That was just that was just like worrying because like, damn.
Well, good.
I was just worried because like loads of YouTube accounts which have like the their bank account set up are getting hacked lately. Like.
No, I know Droid of the Wolves. He's done this for me multiple times. So, and then he remains quiet.
No, yeah, it's just super. Sorry, it just threw me off.
He's
obviously,
he's a man who knows what he's about.
Obviously, thank you and all that, but it was worrying, dude. If you're getting hacked or something, just send me a DM. Like,
So, if are you recovered?
Sorry, just kind of threw me off. Like,
no, you're all right. Okay, so kind of looking at these 10, I guess let's get the Cheese Lords himself perspective. So if you had to rate them as good or bad, unless you could do a order of like best to worst, but I don't want to put you on the spot for that. But are there any that stand out to you as like the most amazing, or any that stand out as like kind of meh as far as
But yeah, for
these
sure.
go?
Like, all right, so transfer settlement good, open gates bad, force rebellion bad, track army meh, reveal faction intentions, don't know what that means really. Reveal shroud could be good. Oh, just close. I was just reading it off. Hang on, just lost it.
Halt faction.
Halt faction overpowered. Give war coordination probably useless. Break alliance very powerful. Force war. You know, it'll be okay.
Yeah, Halt faction is
overpowered at all.
definitely like, I feel like that one's gonna be really popular considering how many people
I feel
hate
like
chasing the AI around.
I feel like force rebellion is something that the player doing it to the AI is going to be useless because the AI have traditionally had auto resolve cheats versus rebellion, so it just never works. But if the AI does that to the player, it's another story because it's super inconvenient and you don't get auto resolve cheats versus rebellions. So there's
Yeah.
definitely some good stuff in there. It's more good than bad, but some of it is junky for sure. You just don't have to use the bad stuff. It's like any law of magic has got some crap spells. You just don't use those spells.
Well, and like any mechanic's got usually has some like lower end stuff. Especially with Tzeentch, like you kind of have to earn your way through it. You know, it's probably good to have a couple of good stepping stones there.
Well, with changing of the ways and the way that their tech tree works, it's like a spiral. You go in one direction, and you sort of stick to it. So you could beeline straight for whichever one you want and ignore the stuff that you don't want because it's like a wheel, a spiral wheel. You just go. It's like a web. You go whichever way you want it to go. It's not a linear tech tree.
Yep, very good point. So a question I see in chat that I just kind of want to answer real quick because I think we can answer it with confidence is there's one that reveals faction intentions, which more than likely is going to be that when it used on a faction, you're probably just going to see arrows pointed from armies showing where they're intending to move or attack. And I assume it'll probably update live because the AI generally probably makes its decisions as far as regarding the player, like before you even click the intern button. So I imagine when you're moving armies around or something, the AI is immediately making responses, and you'll be able to see those demonstrated somehow, whether with large arrows or whatever system they're going to use to make it appropriately Tzeentchy looking. But that's probably how you'll see it in the game. Nathan, any thoughts on the changing of the ways before we go to the next thing?
It seems really out there. Like, I know people want cheesy and mechanics at the beginning and so on, but this just seems like transfer settlements, force a war, break alliance. I don't really give a shit about give war coordination because it really doesn't do anything unless they've changed the AI.
We can only
Hold
hope.
faction sounds fun. Hold faction sounds fun.
Yeah, I just hope they're, appropriately priced. Like, a lot of us really like, Tzeentch's ability to insta kill a faction, but it's difficult. It's really difficult to earn. It takes a while. Like, and I'm sure I can't wait to see how fast Legend's gonna unlock like those god tier techs and probably just break the game system for unlocking the tech tree if Tzeentch has as many ways to increase his tech speed as they're suggesting he can. But I think for us normies, us pitiful peasants, it'll probably take a good while to get those like super mechanics and have enough grimoires to really use them.
Yeah. I mean, if it's done scaled right, like, yeah, Legend will probably get it 20 turns in or whatever. But like normal player style, if it's done to a point that it takes a while to get to that point, sure. But I don't know, it still seems a bit too strong, man. Like, yeah, I get it. This is Tzeentch, this is the change of ways and all that bullshit. With power levels, because every time I see, I'll be very honest with you guys, every time I see these faction mechanic drops, then I think, what about the Warhammer 1 factions and the Warhammer 2 factions and so on? Because the power level is obviously, there's a big scale difference,
Yeah, I mean, and that's kind of an eternal issue, right? Is that older factions are always gonna kind of be playing catch up. But I would also suggest that I don't think it would be the best option to work from an idea of like limiting the future factions to try and like keep them in a similar power system, because ultimately with those Tzeentch mechanics, we don't know all the like specifics. It seems like there will be restrictions. Like I assume Tzeentch won't be able to use any of his mechanics on a faction unless he's met the faction. We also have heard like you can't transfer capital settlements, so you're only going to be transferring minor settlements. There's probably going to be a cooldown period that they haven't really mentioned. So like if you make a faction declare war, you're probably not going to be able to do that again for a long time. If you transfer a settlement, you're probably not going to be able to do that for a little while. You've got grimoires as kind of a currency that you've got to build up, and like there are, they've shown us that there are ways to dedicate yourself to building up grimoires. But a lot of those require you to literally send out armies to farm. Like there's a literal farming mechanic for Tzeentch, which we'll get into in a second. But I'm not too worried until we get like at least all the specifics, and that's always stuff that can be adjusted. Like if it is too strong, and people are like, this is like, busted to the extent of it being just wild, you can always tweak the cooldown timers and prices, and you could level it out.
Yeah, I mean, as always, we're not going to be able to properly know until we see or get our hands on it. It's always a concern when you see something that sounds overpowered and there's no and there's no thing at the bottom saying, but it's not that strong, guys. There's a cooldown or blah 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 blah.
Yeah, well, I mean, they're playing it for the cool card, right? Like they want it to come off as like like fireworks and sparklers and stuff. But yeah, we'll just wait and see. So moving on to the next thing, the Winds of Magic manipulation. I am actually really excited for this mechanic. And I hope it's something that like we see kind of more option or around, is the ability to kind of mess with them. But what are y'all's thoughts on the whole like pick a province and say, okay, you have no Winds of Magic, and pick another province and say you have all the magic?
That's all right. It's not that big of a deal because it depends on how the AI behaves. Like currently in Warhammer 2, the AI is really bad at spell casting. Like you can dupe them into casting spells to actually backfire on them. So I don't really worry about stripping them of their Winds of Magic because they're just so bad at spell casting in the first place. The only thing they're good at doing is casting buffs, which on the campaign aren't that big of a deal compared to like some vortex spells. It just depends on how they use it. But if they improve the AI spell casting, then yeah, stripping them of their Winds of Magic would be very useful.
Yeah, and it also does seem like it's mostly there's kind of a crucial crutch for Tzeentch, because it seems like Tzeentch is going to have a lot of buildings that rely specifically on the Winds of Magic in order to just either work at all or in order to have their fully functioning effects. So with that, I'm assuming that's the primary purpose, is to make sure that your armies have the amount of magic that you want, and to make sure that those buildings that require you to have lots of magic, you're able to kind of pick a province that is not important and funnel magic to where you need it to get those bonuses, whatever they may be.
This is gonna screw Cathay over, isn't it? Did the faction reveal for Cathay not say that the more spellcasters you had together, the better it was, or something along that line?
Yeah, but they haven't really specified exactly how. They've said that the more spellcasters you have in a Cathayan army, the stronger your wizards get. But we don't know like if that's like just the stats on their spells get better, or if they like have more Winds of Magic, or what.
On the previous video that I did, I actually kind of ripped into them about that, because currently in Warhammer 2, you put lots of wizards in your army and your spell casting gets better. But I use that from my point of view of just being able to cast more spells, because currently in the game there's no way to actually increase the actual damage of the spells. But a lot of people in the comments said, and these are people that are very active in the Total War Discord, which I am not, that apparently that the actual damage values and like the values of the buff spells will actually increase the more wizards that you have. So not only will you get more Winds of Magic, but your spells will actually get better with Cathay. That's
Oh.
what they said. I don't know because I didn't read that anywhere. But I'm not even in the Total War Discord, so
So I'm fairly active in the Total War Discord, and there is cases where information does get released there, which like we don't know sometimes.
yeah, I
'Cause,
see some of these things in Reddit, and I swear there's people out there that are way more informed than I am. I'm
Yeah.
just like, I should just stop making videos. This stuff.
Well, yeah, I mean, there's been a lot of like they'll release something and people will ask questions in the Discord, and Simon or one of the devs
Yeah.
will literally just pop in and just toss an answer out.
Yeah.
And so it usually winds up on Reddit. But if that is the case, that it's actually genuinely buffing the spells, I mean that's all right. That can actually be really interesting.
What if it makes their spells stronger, and then you come in with this Tzeentch fuckery and take away their winds of magic? I mean, that's going to be hilarious.
Oh yeah, that would definitely be painful. And I expect that's
And then,
one of the,
and then you just jump over all their armies and teleport into them, and then just take all the settlements and force them to declare war on themselves and break all of their alliances and open all their gates and halt all their movement. Seems
yeah.
balanced to me.
Yeah, Tzeentch, if there's one thing I think they did a really good job with Tzeentch, that I'm looking forward to seeing people really utilize, it's that it really seems like Tzeentch is going to reward you for like being a schemer, in the sense of like build up enough grimoires so that you can do that Hail Mary, just like chain all of your actions into each other, to just like disable the game from doing anything, while you just rampage across to go punch somebody in the face. But because yeah, they have a new stance too. Granted, it's the first stance we've seen that's actually locked until you research it in the tech tree. And it's right at the smack center of the tech tree, so I imagine you have to unlock some text through some spirals, and then it all leads back to the center. But there's a new teleportation stance, which the teleportation stance, for anyone that hasn't had a chance to read it, is basically it costs you some of your winds of magic in order to assume the stance. But once you do, it seems to work like the underway stance, except for if you click it on an enemy army, you teleport on top of them, to the extent that you get a automatic ambush, which is crazy. I don't think there's been a clarification if it's just like 1,000% guaranteed ambush, or if it can be mitigated by like ambush defense chance or something. But it is like, that is an obscene stance. Because, I mean, ambushes are brutal. They are absolutely brutal.
Yep.
Especially considering that Tzeentch is so shooty. So like an ambush, you're just gonna go in and Tzeentch is just gonna start right next to you and just go start throwing garbage.
The problem I've seen with this, other than the fact that it's a guaranteed ambush, because you know, I don't know sometimes when they start writing the game on what they think like that, but like first off, teleportation should kind of be for all 4 demon factions, because it's the whole thing with the warp opening up and so on. And second, I don't understand the
No,
ambush
it wouldn't
thing.
really work for the other 3, because Khorne, everything has to be just a straight line with that dude. With Nurgle, they would smell them coming from a mile away, and with Slanesh, they'd be too busy looking at themselves to actually effectively do a proper ambush.
But the thing is, how it works with and I get it. Like a lot of people get pissed off when I bring lore into it, but demons generally
on
come
Lorebeards, how dare you?
Yeah, no, but people get pissed off when I mention it on a video, which is funny because it's like, well, fuck, man, I'm a primarily lore-based channel. When fuckery happens with like the Realm of Chaos, a portal can open up pretty much anywhere, which is why in Geheimnishnats you can see random bloodthirsters being summoned in the middle of Altdorf or whatever, and it's like, it would be cool to have teleportation with that, like kind of like the Wood Elves had in a sense. That teleportation would have been cool, so you could just start an incursion in another continent rather than randomly ambushing, which I don't like.
So
I honestly don't like it.
I will say, from a lore perspective, I think I know like exactly where they're taking this particular mechanic from. Which I don't think it's meant to represent like the demons appearing because like, oh, the winds of magic are really strong and a portal's ripped open and demons are pouring out. I don't think it's meant to represent that specifically. I think we're going to see more corruption based stuff mess around with that. I think what it's meant to represent is if you go and read the Demons of Chaos, or if you go read the lore about the Great Cataclysm and like the really big war in Lustria, one of the biggest things that happens in that war is that the Lizardmen are actually holding out really well against the demons for like many years. And the main strategy the Lizardmen eventually rely on in order to deal with the demons is to slaw and summon all these giant barriers around the cities. And the demons can't get through them. Like, no matter what they try, they just can't get through these barriers. Kairos Fateweaver, however, figures out a way. And what Kairos does is that Kairos Fateweaver engineers a spell and a method through which he opens portals in the middle of the city right behind the Slaawn, and all the demons are sent through the portal, and so all these like fleshhounds and other demons come pouring out of the portals and kill all the Slaawn, which then drops the barriers and the city would be slaughtered. So, but the only people that could do that were the demons of Tzeentch as far as summoning the portals. All sorts of demons could go through them, but the only demons that were actually able to conjure them into being were like the Lords of Change and and Kairos and the actual demons of Tzeentch. So I think that's probably what inspired this new stance, because it seems to follow a similar methodology in that it's kind of a surprise kind of teleportation as opposed to anything else.
So no, I still don't like it. I think it's too much. I honestly think it's too much.
Well, and that's a fair opinion. Like, I'm excited to mess around with it. I'm curious how much it's going to penalize your magic. Like if it's like a significant penalty, that could be painful.
Yeah, I think -5 winds of magic would be sufficient.
Just isn't the new power pool like 60 or something like that?
All right then, -4.
Oh, okay, that's fair. Okay, we're going in the right direction for negotiations. Yeah.
All part of the plan.
All part of the plan. All according to Keikaku. So, any thoughts from either of y'all on the new corruption system? So the fact that we now have 7 forms of corruption, but it looks like they're adding in that if you have high enough corruption, not only will you gain passives in those areas, not only will you form cults in those areas, but you'll also get active global buffs you can utilize.
Does anyone ever use corruption?
Well, okay, so currently Chaos Corruption is the most useless. Like, for the Beastmen and for the Warriors of Chaos, it does, like, next to nothing. It's like, if you've got a massively Chaos Corrupted region, currently, it's like a bit of extra replenishment rate and leadership for your units. And if it's above 50%, attrition for the enemy, which is, if you're playing on higher difficulties, the enemy have 90% resistance to attrition, so it's basically nothing. The vampire accounts actually make very good use out of their attrition, because if they have low corruption, they have huge public order problems, but if they have high corruption, it gets rid of that public order problems and gives them additional public order. So vampire accounts with high corruption are actually one of the highest public order races, next to like the High Elves and Lizardmen, so it's very useful for them. Skaven corruption is also really useful. You want to have a good amount of Skaven corruption because it doesn't cause that many problems, but it gives you lots of menace blows, and menace blows are very useful.
Yeah, and one thing Legend has a good point with that I think is hopefully the case with this is it looks like they're kind of reworking corruption, at least chaos corruption, to actually be useful. Because you're right that in its current iteration, it depends a lot on who you're playing. But like with this Tzeentch system, it's like, okay, if you've got high enough corruption in an area where you're not there or you don't control the entire thing, now you get a cult that allows you to build a building and you can like get more grimoires. It seems like that's actually going to be one of the most reliable ways to. I'm sure one thing we're going to probably see from Legend is, I imagine the cultist hero is going to be all about spreading corruption, and if you throw them out there and spread just shitloads of it, and you start building all those grimoire buildings, you're going to be like just mass producing grimoires like it's a factory. Which I imagine will be key for those, if you want to really spam those changing of the ways mechanics. Plus, now we've got this like global system where you get actives and passives, and they do mention in the article that they're not showing everything the new corruption does. Apparently there are some passives that will also affect your army, so I imagine you'll get like stat buffs and stuff if you have high enough corruption. That'll be depending on the type, but with there being so many kinds of corruption, seems like it could actually be a pretty genuinely interesting contest to have yours be the highest when you're having to deal with like not only Chaos Undivided and the three other gods, but you've also still got Skaven, vampires, and the unaligned. But I am excited to see the global meter. I think the idea of like rewarding you for spreading your corruption globally as much as possible by unlocking buffs is really fun. I don't know if the abilities are like super amazing, but it's just another tool, which is never a bad thing.
We won't know until we actually play it because a lot of those are very context driven. So
Yeah.
it's just a lot of words, but we just don't know how it's actually going to play. Like they say, some of the things that you can do, your army has to stand still, but they don't specify how long you have to stand still and how much you get. It just says you will get this if you do this, but it's super vague. So they tell us something, but also tell us nothing at the same time. CA is very good at that.
Yeah, and that's a good point.
It's the problem with the blogs, and like, don't get me wrong, I like them because it gives a lot of information. And yeah, I must admit, after reading the blogs, I did get a bit more hyped up for Warhammer 3 than I have been. But like, yeah, no info, or maybe just one or two in-game screenshots that really doesn't tell us much. Like this, the tech tree doesn't really give us any information regarding the game, barring, yes, there's a tech tree. Whoop-de-doo, every faction has a tech tree.
Yeah, and it's kind of one of those things where like we all want information and to see stuff, but the game's still 5 months away ish. I'm sure when the day comes that they're finally showing campaign footage and like let's plays, so to speak, before they send it out to the creators like ourselves to tinker around with and stuff. Like, I don't know, like showing specific numbers at this point I feel is almost kind of useless because like the odds of them staying the same are just very, very small.
Numbers. I'm not saying numbers. I'm just saying like it's just, say for example, we've got a bar for the corruption, right? Show a little bit more of that bar. Give it a little bit more of just a little bit of something would be nice. Just in general, a little bit of visual stuff is stimulating. It's cool. Some Slaneshi feet. Some basic stuff.
And I kind of have I tend to lean very heavily in the thing of like it'll get here when it gets here.
It will. I'm just tired of waiting.
Same.
Yeah, and that's definitely like a prevalent feeling throughout the community. But we still got, let's see, we're almost to November. We're getting there, but hopefully we'll have a release date by the end of the year that will give us a much more specific time to look forward to.
What happened to our pre-order bonus being told about in September? What happened to that, CA?
I think that died along with everything else about getting stuff out this year. But
Yeah.
So moving on to the next mechanic.
I mean, everybody knows what it is. Everybody knows what the pre-order bonus is.
Yeah, I know.
Just confirm it.
Said it
Just
so many times.
They're sitting there like, we need our trailer, and it's like, do you though?
They've literally dropped so many hints. Everybody knows exactly what it is now. There's like no delusions, unless it's the biggest red herring of all time, which CA are pretty bad at doing. Just like, we all know what the pre-order bonus is. It's Chaos Dwarf.
It would be a little fun. Yeah, it would be a little funny if they came out and they were like, Hobgoblin Khanate. there you go. There's your pre-order. just to see what happens. So
Halflings.
Yeah, halflings. The moot invades. You thought the Mountains of Morn had ogres? Nah. The ogres got wiped out. It's halflings now. So what do y'all think about the cults? Like it seems like a fairly reserved as far as like how powerful it is. But I'm really curious.
It's one of those things that'll work on in the background, just like a pretty minor thing. I think they were sort of testing it a little bit with Oxyodal's mechanics. You know how he does the Silent Sanctum?
Yeah, that's
it's
a good
like
point.
an undercity, except it's in your own city, and it's just behind. It's behind, like buildings behind your building, and you'll barely even notice it's there. And it's just like, instead of having a minor settlement with 4 buildings, you've then got a minor building with like 5 buildings instead. So it's just like something extra behind the scenes. And I think they were just testing Warhammer 3 mechanics with Oxyodal a little bit there.
Yeah,
which is cool.
Fair point.
So I'm actually, believe it or not, I like the idea of the cults because it's so heavily embedded into like chaos lore that we have cults and cults and cults, and 5 years later and we still don't have cults. Then again, the only chaos faction that's playable kind of sucks at the moment. But
Kind of.
well, you know, mods exist.
They're good in multiplayer.
But I like the idea of cults. I like the idea of cults. I hope it does a little bit more. I'm assuming it's going to do a little bit more than this. Like, you know, like the Skaven can bring up an army like a Vermintide. Well, Chaos cults, it would be kind of fun if they could do the same, you know?
Well, yeah, and I'm curious if it's maybe tied into like the actual corruption system. Like, I would not be surprised if there's a system where if you got to like 90% or something ridiculously high, maybe allows you to spawn an army or something. But you know, we'll have to wait and see.
It'd be kind of cool.
Yeah, and then the last thing is the tech tree, which I mean we can't get super into because we don't have like genuine access to what it everything is and what it does. But it does look appropriately Tzeentch as far as like you start in a center and then it just kind of goes all over the place like a big spider web, and you kind of go out, grab certain text, so you can come back to the center and go out and come back. Which
kind of reminds me of the Skaven tech tree, which is actually, I think, one of the best tech trees. You have so many options in different directions that you go, and you're constantly switching which way that you want to be going. Whereas the opposite is like the Warriors of Chaos one, which is the most linear out of all of them.
Yeah, and it's super boring. It's very boring.
Your progression route is by paying, isn't it?
Yeah, you pay to go to the right, and then you can go down for free, but they're like, A, they're not that good, and B, it's just, yeah. But yeah, Tzeentch looks like his tech tree will be like, I'm sure there will be people, probably like Legend that find like an optimal route through the tech tree, but I think...
Giving me too much credit, as if I'd do that.
Yeah, I know. I guess that's more of a speedrun strat than a cheese strat, isn't it? Like I think Tzeentch is gonna have a lot of good replayability as far as like how you decide to focus your faction and design it in order to design your playstyle. But
the way I'm looking at it is Tzeentch is going to be the next Skaven, the faction everybody loves to play but hates to play against, and there'll be calls on the Reddit for CA, please nerf Tzeentch, it's too OP.
Man, I think for me it's going to come down to how fast the AI gets that teleportation stance. I can see that teleportation stance being nightmarish to go up against.
Well, the thing is, regardless of how long it takes them to do, there's always going to be some players that just will not really get a strong start. 100 turns in, they're still sitting at 4 settlements, and they just let the AI build up. So unless you really focus down on Tzeentch in the early game, and depending on your start position, that just might not be an option, you are probably going to have to deal with it in some of your campaigns, and it doesn't look like it would be a lot of fun to deal with.
Man, if only we had like actually dynamic difficulty modifiers that could like change your playstyle to fit your skill level. Oh well. Oh well. All right, so moving on to the next faction. Tzeentch is honestly probably the strongest looking as far as like just crazy wild mechanics that seem like a lot of fun. Let's take a look at the most recent. So let's pop over to old Kislev and see what they've got cooking. So Kislev, I don't know if y'all would agree with this, but to me, when I was reading the devotion system, which devotion is their currency as far as like mechanics go, is that you build up devotion, you can spend it in your tech tree and on certain abilities and stuff. I kind of was getting a Bretonnia vibe as far as like playstyle from a campaign mechanics of like you build your devotion by doing certain actions, but if you do like heretical actions, that'll hurt your devotion or like get you in trouble. It kind of reminds me of the chivalry system for Bretonnia.
Except you couldn't really spend chivalry. It was just like a meter that you needed to fill up to finish the campaign.
Yeah. Good point. Definitely.
With the exception of confederations, you spent it that way.
Yeah, like it definitely seems like, yeah, chivalry, I think you could spend on like 5 or 6 techs. But the devotion system kind of seems like a more evolved version. I'm really liking the use of being able to use it in text. I'm curious if you're going to be using it in other places. Like, I wouldn't be surprised to maybe see it like used in buildings and stuff. But the supporter system does actually kind of look interesting. I kind of like the race against the other Kislevite faction in order to earn Confederation and like impress all the other Kislev armies. I wonder if you lose that race as the player, what happens? Like, is it just that the AI would immediately confederate all the other factions and you just have to like fight them at that point? If you lose the race, what do y'all think?
I think it's just exactly what you said. Like if you're playing as Katarin and Castelton gets ahead of you and confederates all the other minor Kislev factions, then not only are you dealing with chaos, but you also have to deal with Castelton, who just wants you gone because anti-player bias. That's basically it. So you not only do you in your campaign have to compete against chaos, but you also have to compete against your rival within Kislev. So that if you win the race, you just get to confederate him, kind of.
Yeah,
I-
Nathan, any thoughts?
The competing thing, obviously, I'm sorry, it makes no sense to me.
Yeah,
Like,
I didn't really like it either. I
uh,
just was like, meh. This is not something that I'm super keen on.
I
Uh,
mean, I think it's
This comes
cool.
across as like the politics system from Rome 2, which was just heavily punishing. This seems like rather than providing, it does provide some rewards, but it seems like if you do a bad job, it's going to heavily punish your campaign.
Yeah.
Whereas Tzeentch's stuff is just like buffs, 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 buffs. It's not like if you don't play into the mechanic, your campaign's going to up and die. Whereas this, it seems like you are forced to have to deal with this stuff.
The thing is, this is a complete copy paste of the Priam mechanic from Troy. Um, and again, it's like you said, you're competing against chaos. You're competing against. They've also mentioned that you're competing against the Empire and vampires and so on. And then you're competing against your own people, which for me makes no sense. If it was the fact that yes, the people would be like old Kislev law, where you had two different cultures which were known to argue and fight, cool. But this is just a church and state, and it just makes no sense to me. Why would I want to? Would we not be fighting for the same greater good in a term of a thematic sense, right? We know hordes of chaos are coming down. Why am I focusing on some old Rasputin, like Warhammer
Although, to be
version?
fair, this is very historically accurate.
Yeah, personally,
Yes.
personally, I like the mechanic, but for me the thing that I enjoy about it is I kind of like the idea of dealing with an infighting type situation without actually just declaring war and just because I feel like for a lot of armies it tends to be kind of a fast track situation of your confederation mechanic is you just either completely ignore them until you gobble them up through like some automatic button that you click, or you just beat the shit out of them until you force them to join up with you. I personally kind of like that Kislev offers a new perspective of that they are a rival, so you can't declare war on them without gaining a lot of massive penalties, but you are still competing against them while working towards a greater goal. And hopefully, I mean, for me, it's going to come down to if they do a good job of making it feel intrinsic. Like I really agree with what Legend said of that. I would not want it to be a system of like it's making me do stuff I would not otherwise do in order to fill up this meter. Hopefully it's just that through just playing the faction, like kicking the crap out of chaos and like hopefully like using the prayers to these gods because I really want those buffs and unlocks. Hopefully by doing that I'm filling up the meter just by like playing the army in any way that it can be played, as opposed to like, oh, if you don't play this a specific way, then you're gonna have a bad time. Because if they do it that way, then I agree that it would not be fun.
Yeah,
Hopefully,
that's what I was suspecting.
yeah, hopefully it's a system of this further enhances your experience of if you're just playing Kislev, you will find ways to fill the meter. It's just about finding a way that works with your play style, which of course can be a tricky thing to land from a game development perspective.
I mean, we have to go through what is it, supporters, right? That's what fills in the bar.
Yeah, but you gain supporters by like they mentioned that one of the easiest ways to get it to fill up the meters by just fighting chaos. So whenever you beat
Yeah,
a
look,
chaos
it
army,
says
oh,
it
go
says
ahead.
it there. Supporters generated 1 when gaining a character rank. So obviously, make a sack city and start spamming levels up, and
Yeah,
you'll just gain lots of supporters that way.
yeah. So
So
they,
they're encouraging you to cheese the hell out of the game, which I'm fine with.
yeah, Kislev will
Full
probably be
stack of heroes, just level up characters. That's it. When a character reaches level 40, disband it, start again, get more supporters.
Yep.
Well, this leads me to a question then, because I must admit I didn't play a lot of Trojans when it came to um
Okay, any Trojans, I
Troy.
didn't play it once.
Yeah, I mostly liked the Greeks, but the Trojans had this mechanic. But I'm assuming that by player bias, the other faction would just be automatically getting stuff without doing anything.
Yeah, that's just how it's always been with that stuff. It's the same thing in the Vortex campaign, with the Vortex resource. The AI just gets it for free. They don't actually like if you look at all the ways that they could potentially generate it, they're always generating way more than they should because it's sort of relative to how they like the AI. The game sort of identifies when somebody's fallen behind and goes, okay, here's a little bit more for you, so that the AI factions are sort of keeping up with each other.
Oh,
This is why when
rubber bands.
yeah, rubber bands. That's one of the reasons why I hate the Vortex campaign so much. It's so scripted, which is why if you just don't play into it, it actually slows down the progress of the other factions. Because if you're lagging behind, the game is not constantly being like, "Come on, AI, come on, keep trying to keep up." Whereas if you rush it, it actually forces the game to make it actually harder for you, sort of. There's a lots of the AI is not playing the same game as you, and they never have. Because if they did, they would always lose. Every single time, they would always lose.
Yeah, I'm curious how they're gonna handle it with the system because I'm with you, Nathan. I don't know how the AI does it in Troy. Like, I would assume it just gets like a base amount depending on what's going on. But it seems like it's a fairly simple system, so maybe the AI is able to actually legit do it. Because it seems like with Kislev, what it is that each of the 4 gods generate supporters through a different way. Because the only one we've seen is Solyak because they have it clicked on her, and Solyak is the one where every time you level up a character, you get 1 supporter. Um, so it's going to be interesting to see like what the different ways to gather supporters are. And of course, we do know that it isn't just a pure race. You can sabotage the enemy, which are the supporter actions you see there in the bottom right. They have made mention that if you like spend money, you can sabotage. If you're playing Katerin, you can sabotage Kostalton and knock his meter down, in order to like buy yourself more time or something like that.
Yeah, literally the Troy mechanic, just copy pasted and reskinned.
Well, yeah. Well, why come up with something completely brand new when you could just like take something from another game and it's new in this game? Like if you haven't played Troy, it's still
Troy
new.
Troy is a tech demo for Warhammer 3.
I said that in a stream a while back, and people go angry. It's like, look, it's generally a good game. Like I like Troy. The only problem is I just don't like how it was handled. But like if it would have just been a Steam release and not gone to Epic, I think it would be doing a lot better because mechanically it's good.
The entire game, Troy, was just like a huge divisive survey to see which mechanics that they wanted to put into Warhammer 3 or not.
Did
All
you?
it was.
No,
That's
like, did you see, that thing with the unique monsters in Troy where Mythos came out, right? Where you can go for the Griffin, the dog, or the Hydra. Like, that is
all
what
creatures that don't exist in Warhammer.
But, that's kind of how I imagine a possible mechanic in the future for Chaos Undivided, where you can devote yourself to a god with like maybe the Warriors of Chaos and stuff like that, or how the Warriors of Chaos will be able to unlock mono god units by going on some random expedition to be able to fight a greater demon to then get those mono god units.
Maybe.
Just like Norska.
Well, Noska's kind of. Can we just delete that?
He's not wrong. He's not wrong.
Noska, like, I don't even acknowledge that it fucking exists, man. At this point, like, I want that DLC gone, man. I really
That's
do.
that's how I felt about the Beastman. I used to say, people asked me what could they do to fix the Beastman. And I said they should just delete that faction from the game. They fixed the Beastman.
Yeah, they'll
So
fix
they
Norska.
might fix
They'll get
Norska.
around to it.
It took 5 years.
So
It took 5 years.
yeah, we're not going anywhere. More than likely.
Yeah.
I'm just saying, like, holy crap! It took 5
I
years.
agree. Norska is terrible right now. Right now, it's terrible. But we'll see. We'll see.
Yeah, I can't.
It'll
believe
get
they're
there.
40 years old, and them eventually
We'll
getting
see.
their rework.
It'll get
Yeah,
there.
well, I think Norska's next because I saw somewhere they said that they think that Norska was the one most in need of it, and they definitely are right about that.
Yeah, it seems that
we'll see.
Norska is going to be a pretty important faction in Total Warhammer 3. As one of the
World Walkers, Throgna.
they're probably going to be out there being an early beat up faction you can slap around as Cathay or something. One of continuing on with Kislev, one of the next faction or mechanic they have, which I'm actually pretty excited for because this is not a new mechanic to Total War, but it's the Adamants. So recruiting characters who are specifically designed to basically be slotted into watching over a province, and they just like generate buffs and abilities for it. So they're not combat characters; they are campaign characters who are designed to kind of level up and provide various buffs and kind of manage your empire.
I feel like that does sound familiar, but I'm not sure if any other Total War game has had exactly that before, where you assign governors into certain provinces. I mean, I think we've only had a few Total War games that have done that.
Only a few.
Only a few.
It's definitely hasn't been every single one of them ever.
Yeah.
But I am excited to see it coming to Total War. I honestly kind of hope it spreads to a couple more factions. A lot. Okay, chat. I don't think there was a /s chat /s. They're all like, "What about this
Yeah,
game?"
look, I'm very sarcastic. Yeah.
Is he sure? Has he played this game? I actually kind of like the idea that one thing I find interesting is that you can't just recruit as many as you want. You only get one adamant for every 2 provinces, so you're always going to have to be making choices about where they go. You're never going to have enough adamants for all of your empire. But I'm really curious what exactly kind of abilities they're going to be bringing in. But between them and Cathay, it really seems like they're starting to lean into this, creating a new lord type that isn't like a real new lord, but is almost kind of like a Dark Elf Fleet Master, in that they're like a pseudo new lord that provides a very specific function. Because with Kislev, we've now got the Ataman. With Cathay, which we'll get into in a minute, we've got the trade road boss caravan guy. But personally, I'm really looking forward to the Ataman. I imagine it's going to be exactly like the Fleet Master in that it'll probably just be like a boyar or whatever the lord guy is. But maybe he'll have like slightly different equipment or a slightly different appearance. But he's not meant to be in battle. He's meant to be providing you buffs on the campaign map. Nathan, you look like you got something on your tongue.
I don't know, man. It's just I like the idea. It's cool that they're saying this because obviously, like we know, like where was it here? Sorry, I'm just like
No,
you can use them in battle, right? They did mention.
Yeah,
that
you
there?
can. You can take them out of their provincial thing and use them to lead an army. But they mentioned that's not like what they're good at. They say they can't gain experience the normal way, but I wonder if they mean that like they can also gain experience through other things, or if they just can't get experience through battle. Because otherwise, like I think most people would immediately take them out of their province, throw them into like a just sacking a settlement 100 times, get them to max level, and then put them in a province.
I think they'll just take off that experience bar. I mean, maybe just have it with. I think Troy had this again, where you would do dilemmas, and that would get you experience up on your units for the expedition.
Yeah, that's what they say in the article, is that they'll do dilemmas to level up, and like we'll level up watching over a province.
Dilemmas are so much fun.
But how
I
often?
hope they do it. exactly the same way as the Forge of Death. I'm talking original Forge of Death. Random. Fun.
Yes. And everyone loved it.
Yeah.
Everyone loved it. It was the best mechanic.
Take away the player's control. That's exactly how you make a faction great again. I'm being sarcastic, by the way.
Yeah.
No, he's being literal. Take him at
Yeah.
everything he says exactly.
So-
Yeah,
Mad
I don't like randomness. I don't like dilemmas. You know, I don't like that stuff at all.
Well, that's the question, actually, because if it's going to be dilemmas, how often will these dilemmas be, or will these lords just be like? Because look, a dilemma is it provides basically nothing, barring just like every now and then you get that good one, which increases your growth when you need growth increases. But even then, you're like, it doesn't really like. You completely ignore them most of the time. You just click no, 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 and that's it.
Well, I imagine it's not going to be a yes/no thing. It's probably going to be like, this thing has happened. You have to choose either this or
There'll be
this.
4 choices. There'll be 4 choices. You know,
4 choices.
spend
Yeah.
1,000 gold, gain this much. Spend 1,000 devotion, gain this much. Lose. Or no, gain devotion and lose control. Who knows? There'll be 4 choices. It's with the dilemma stuff. It's always 4 choices. It's the same thing with like the slans with Lizardmen. They've actually got 5 slans, but
I hate that so
there can
much.
only be 4 choices.
I don't even. Let's hold on. Let's pivot. Let's not even get into that.
Yeah, I knew that would trigger you. 'Cause I know
Just
I've heard you
saying,
rant about that.
a mod fixes that and adds in all the remaining slans. So
A mod fixes
Yeah.
everything.
If you go into custom battles, there's 5 laws of slans, but
Yep.
you can't have 5 dilemmas. It makes no sense. It's uneven. So
It's impossible with the computing power we have in this age. All right, so moving on to the next mechanic, we've got the Ice Court. So Kislev has a new system where you no longer unlock the ability to recruit wizards. Okay. Well, just be us for a minute then. Legend, how are you? How have you been?
Yeah, good. I've been very relaxed.
Yeah, enjoying yourself? Been up to anything particularly interesting, or just been chilling out?
I've just been chilling out. I've been very, very lazy. I went from working like 60 hours a week to working like 8 hours a week. I don't know. It's so much easier. It's very manageable now.
Yeah, I would hope so.
Yeah.
Well, good. I'm glad you're doing well, man. And thanks,
Yeah.
thanks of course for coming on.
It's all right.
So
I was busy, but that's okay. I'm just kidding.
So looking at the Ice Court, so basically instead of just recruiting a wizard, so you unlock the ability to recruit them, you just buy them. End of story. This system seems to instead be that you will initiate recruiting one, so you'll pay some money to start their training, and once you start their training, it will unleash a series of dilemmas where you pick in a binary system one of 2 choices to customize them towards certain things. So the example they give us is that it looks like this character has an option between a campaign buff and a battle buff. So it kind of reminds me of the Dark Elf system. When Dark Elves get a title, like a title of power or whatever, you'll get a dilemma that's like, do you want your title to be this and it gives you these buffs, or do you want to get this and it gives you these buffs? And generally they are like a campaign buff versus a battle buff. Personally, I do like.
With the Dark Elves, you choose, if it's a Dark Elf Lord, you choose between 3 different types of dilemmas. So you choose between a faction-wide buff, an army-wide buff, or a Lord buff. And then there's always there's 2 that are always paired together, and then there's like 5 different types of dilemmas that will show up for each one. That's how that
right.
works.
Yeah, I drew a brain fart there. So
it's okay.
For the ice witches, personally, I actually really like this because I feel like it's probably going to lead to less of what I end up doing, which is I'll open my tab of heroes and look at characters and be like, I don't like any of these traits. And so like I'll wait a few turns or hire someone and immediately suicide them to try and get a better trait. Whereas this, like, you'll be able to pick your traits, which I think
I like that. Yeah,
is probably going to be a lot
buy
more.
a trait. That'll make cheesing a lot easier.
Yeah.
Can I buy some knowledgeable, please?
Like I am more than happy to like add a few turns, but to get a trait that I want instead of the old system of like just hoping I roll good on the randomization.
Yeah, there's nothing quite like playing a vampire count campaign and being like 40 turns in and you haven't gotten your first knowledgeable necromancer yet.
Yeah, you're just like, please God, stop giving me
I've
aggressive.
wasted 50,000 dark magic. Can I please just have one?
Stop
Yeah.
giving me aggressive
Perceptive.
necromancers. I don't need
Yeah.
aggressive necromancers.
Yeah.
Nathan, any thoughts?
Someone put it on the Discord once. It's Build-A-Bear. It's literally Build-A-Bear.
I like Build-A-Bear. It's
What's
a
that?
it's a cool place. It's a place where you go build a teddy bear.
Oh, okay.
It's just Build-A-Bear, but for spellcasters. And
Oh, right.
all I feel is this is going to be forgotten about because look, it takes what 6 turns to. Well, we assume 6 turns as the baseline because obviously it says 6 there. How often do you guys just skip all notifications? And sometimes cock up, sometimes because, oh, I forgot to upgrade this building. Oh, I forgot to do this. If that's tied to that too, your spellcasters are going to suck.
Well, I imagine like, I mean, if you're just kind of spam clicking through your notifications, you might miss them for a few turns. But I imagine there's not like a hard timer on like. I imagine it's you start training them and it asks you to pick a trait. And once you pick a trait, you probably just have to wait for a certain amount of turns and then they go into your recruitment pool unless you somehow get the ability to give them multiple traits, which I would be surprised at, but I suppose it's possible. And of course, we don't know what the tech tree is going to do to it. I imagine it will have interactions with the tech tree as far as like maybe giving you more traits, or you can it's a faster timer, or it like who knows beyond just recruitment ranks. Like it I just kind of I am down for more customizable characters, even if it's kind of a faction specific mechanic. It's personally something I will enjoy as far as being able to I like to plan my characters and I like to have really specific traits and try and get like really good synergies and stuff, which I think this Kislev is like leaning really nicely into.
I'm just it just makes me think about a few things because obviously spellcaster lords are generally the things that most people want to go for because well, let's be honest, magic's kind of broken in Total War when comparing it. Why would you want a melee lord when you can have the one that literally casts fireballs or shit like that, you
Fuck
know?
on that, Carl Franz.
Exactly. But now, if it takes 6 turns, I don't want to wait 6 turns to get a spellcaster. Like it's a bit weird, you know? It is kind of strange.
I think it's just a like not risk versus reward, but like effort versus reward, I guess. Like if you're able to get really significant traits and really able to design,
Yeah, that will make a big difference. That is actually quite good, I think. I like that.
Yeah.
I'm more than happy to wait longer to get one that I want because I am constantly recruiting and disbanding bad traits in order to get the traits that I want because they do make a huge difference if you focus on it.
Don't know,
It
honestly.
just depends. I mean, if you don't care about a good trait or whatever, you just want to get one in a rush, then just order it in advance and just don't worry too much about
yeah, just speak
what
like
traits they get.
Just order it in
Yeah.
advance.
Yeah, just order one and Amazon will deliver it eventually. It's gonna be beat up and by piston, but whatever.
it'll
You
get
should
there.
see my post office. It's
It'll
always
get there. It'll get there. It won't be any good, but you'll get it. Or you could FedEx it.
All right, and then the last thing of note for Kislev is of course their tech tree, which their tech tree is kind of interesting in that it's kind of Norska's tech tree in a sense, but taken to another level. Of that, the vast majority of their tech tree is tied behind owning specific settlements. In that you have their basic tree, and then there is a tree for Kislev, a tree for Erengrad, and a tree for Prague, which themselves seem to also have building locks. So it seems like you're going to have to build specific buildings, probably in those cities, in order to unlock the later techs down the line. But there seems to be a lot of weight being applied to. They really want you to be eager to take Prague, Kislev, and Erengrad. Like those 3 cities are really important for a Kislev campaign.
I can't wait for somebody to send me in a campaign. Oh, legend! How my campaign's going so well. I decided to conquer Norska to begin with, and they own next to nothing of Kislev. I can't wait for that. You know, to see this huge sprawling empire, which starts at Prague because they lost their main capital, just goes all the way through Norska, turn 300, chaos invasions coming through. None of the tech tree is done.
I've lost.
I've had someone sent in a CFR where no technologies have been done before.
Wow,
They surely do that intentionally.
Yeah,
though,
that's got to be deliberate.
Well, he never built the buildings needed to unlock the first tech.
Oh.
It was like turn 50. Just he never built it.
Man,
I have had that happen before.
there is nothing that I think will humble a person. Like you think like nobody can mess this up. This is like super basic game design, and then you meet some people and you're like, never mind, never mind. I understand now.
I've seen things. I have seen things. Okay.
Man, that's spooky. But yeah, like it's basically I'm curious if they're gonna make it difficult to acquire the cities you don't have. I imagine whichever Kislev campaign you play as will start you with one of the cities. Presumably Katarin will probably start with the city of Kislev itself. Kostaltin will probably be in Prague, if I had to guess. And then it's just kind of, there'll probably be some minor faction you have to deal with. So I'm guessing they're going to try and kind of ward it behind the idea of you need to go through the favor system or the supporter system in order to confederate those factions, or get lucky and hope that somebody else like runs over and raises it or takes it so you can take it back through force. Because I imagine they're not going to make it super easy as far as like running over and just grabbing it in order to unlock the techs. But we'll have to see. Any final thoughts on Kislev before we go to Cathay?
It lacks a lot of context. I mean, the stuff might be good or it might not be good. It just depends on how the AI is balanced. Unlike with the Tzeentch stuff, which if you do get access to it, it's just going to be fun all for everyone. Whereas this could go either way, I think.
Yeah, it does certainly seem a little less I don't know what word I'm looking for, but it's a little less razzle dazzle than Tzeentch's is.
Yeah, it doesn't have the context of how the other factions are going to play it with it. Whereas Tzeentch's stuff doesn't require what everyone else is doing. It's just like, oh, cool, you can do this and you can do that. Whereas the Kislev mechanic is, you've got to play around with the other factions. You need to know what they're doing. So what you're going to do is largely going to be dependent on what the other Kislev faction does.
Yeah.
And if you don't know what they do, then who knows how your campaign's going to go down.
Yeah, fair point.
It just has no context.
Nathan, any thoughts before we jump to Cathay?
No, I mean, look, I like the Kislev mechanics. I am probably more excited for Kislev than I am Cathay. But where are my uncles?
Yeah, they are weirdly absent. Like there's Gospodar stuff literally named everywhere.
DLC.
Yeah, so that's
Gotta leave something for DLC.
Yeah, that's what I'm thinking too. Is that they're like, because that's the only thing that makes sense to me. Because it's either that the Ungles are there, but they're just not using the word for some reason, or they're saving it for a big DLC. Which I hope is the latter, because I really wanted to see the Ungles as a major thing. But
no, certain powers that be could just delete them because it doesn't make sense anymore in this new law.
Well, I mean, they could, but I don't know. Like if they were willing to like update all of the weird old Cathay lore that didn't make sense and be like, here's how it makes sense now, I don't see why they wouldn't make the Ungles work. That doesn't make any sense. But anyway,
seen weirder.
That's true. You're not wrong. All right, so last but certainly not least, at least depending on your opinion, we're on to Grand Cathay and their system. So the first thing they make note of is that we have the Harmony system, which is basically that everything in the Cathay campaign, from their text to their buildings to what lords you recruit, will generate either yin or yang. And depending on what you generate, it will push your Harmony meter towards one side. And it sounds like if you keep it in the center, you get the most buffs when you are in Harmony. But if you push too far to one side, it may provide specific buffs, but it starts to depower buildings related to that as you like overdose on yin or yang. It seems they make mention that.
Sorry.
What'd you
No,
say?
I'll let you finish. Sorry. You finish. You finish.
Okay. The one thing they do make mention of as kind of an example is that if you go like super duper hard on yang, there are buildings that are yang aligned, and they will apparently become less efficient if you have too much yang in your system.
Funny thing is about the whole harmony system is that Creative Assembly's marketing department has no idea about harmony. They're just like all yang to trailer. No balance at all. Just yang it up like crazy. Forget about yin. Just
The
all
fools.
yang.
They should have
Yeah.
learned. They should have learned their
Yeah.
own lessons.
Yeah, you got to balance it out. You got to, throw in a trailer, give some mechanics. Throw in a trailer, give some mechanics. Not just like trailers.
So
Oh,
it,
God,
it
yeah.
does seem that Cathay is going to be a race that it doesn't seem like you have to do a specific plan as far as like you have to play it the same way every time, but it does seem that it's not necessarily a race, or it is a race that's going to punish you for going like, I really like this particular thing, so I'm going to go all in on this. It seems like it's really going to want you to do, okay, I'm going to do a little bit of this, I'm going to do a little bit of this, I'm going to do a little bit of this, and I'm going to do a little bit of this. Depending, of course, on how severe the buffs are. I mean, there are some factions in the game that have debuffs like Queek. If Queek doesn't own Carrick 8 peaks, like who gives a shit? What's like -1 public order?
-2.
It's like who cares? If
you're playing on Legendary, you're already at -8, so
Yeah,
then you're at -10.
I'm curious how significant the debuffs will be if you're not in harmony. But I do overall like the idea. Like I like the idea of kind of having a tit for tat in the sense of like needing to pay attention to what you're doing. And kind of having to check in every once in a while and being like, okay, how am I doing from like a yin and yang perspective? Do I need to like I'm really enjoying investing heavily on yang lords and yang units, so does that mean I need to invest more heavily into yin techs in order to balance it out? Or do I maybe dedicate a province to yin in order to balance out all of my yang focus and etc. like that? I think that actually has a pretty interesting it might make the player think a little bit, which Total War Warhammer doesn't always do.
I think what they're trying to do with this, because currently in Total War, most armies benefit from being totally unbalanced. And I think that what they really want to drive home with Cathay is that they want you to build everything within balance. They don't want you to spam one unit type. They don't want you to have 20 wizards in one army. They want you to use basically half of your armies should be yin units and half of them should be yang units, and that they want you to build balance because there is a big outcry. So what they're doing here, I think, is giving you buffs and benefits to balance, whereas previously entire mechanics would just be entirely ignored just because the bonuses are not that good. So I'm sure that there's one of these is like not that good, but you have to get it in anyway in order to get the other stuff to be as good as it is, so they balance things out.
So what you're
That's
telling
my
me,
interpretation of it.
so what you're telling me is you think that Cathay is going to be the only one balanced throughout the whole game series.
I mean,
Balance is a general term, like relative term, I suppose. Like
Yeah.
compared
Oh,
to
yeah.
Tzeentch, I mean, I'm sure Cathay will be like 100% more balanced than Tzeentch.
Oh, they'll be Mary Sued. It's fine.
Well, it's
Yeah,
like
I'm sure they'll. Yeah.
Yeah, there are factions that like they have different niches, right? Like if you play Total War Warhammer 2, if you want to play balanced, well, then you should never get anywhere near Ikit Claw. Ikit Claw is the most broken, dumb shit in the universe. But
Nice.
but people just like it, like, and that's fine. Like, not every faction needs to be balanced. The whole philosophy of Warhammer is that it's not a balanced level playing field. It's all wibbly wobbly. In that, but it seems like Cathay is kind of trying to find a way to make a faction that rewards you and is best played balanced. Because I mean, I'm sure if you go watch any of Legend stream, you'll know that if you play any of the other races, there are really specific things. If you're just wanting to be as strong as possible, there are really specific things that you need to do, and there will be entire aspects of the armies that you're just not going to use. Like, that's not the way I play. I like to play like balanced in the sense that I like to try and have everything, because I like the kind of the variety. But my playstyle is not optimal. It's just the flavor that I like. But it's by no means like it's harder to do flat out. And like but that's kind of the whole thing with the sandbox game, right? Is you can't when you're dealing with a sandbox strategy game, you can't force players to utilize certain systems. You just got to give them options and hope that you incentivize them enough to utilize those options.
But when
Yeah.
a small majority of the options are clearly the only best way to go, there's not really an option, is there?
No, there is an option. That's on you as a person or as a player.
Well, that's what happens with Norska, right? This is the Norska problem, is that you have options, and 99% of them are terrible, and one option, only one, is like clearly the best. And they make the entire campaign so painful that it's just like, well, you know what? The only way I'm even going to have a chance of succeeding is by going down this one route that isn't total crap. So if they want to give you the options to do the other roads, then they have to make those roads viable and give you benefits, even if they're not, the most overpowered unit. There's got to be some sort of benefit from having it.
Yeah, and I mean, I think that's ultimately the thing. Like, I think the idea of having it where, like, oh, every race needs to be, like, this level of power, it's unachievable. It's never going to happen. I think it's just, the best thing they could do is just try and make it fun, but try and have different play styles. There will be people who will hate certain races in Warhammer, and that's never going to change. Like, doesn't matter how fun they are, they just don't like that play style. They're gonna look at that and be like, I hate this. I don't like this. Like I think most people would agree Beastmen are really fun right now, but there are probably people that look at Beastmen, they're like, I like to paint the map my color, and I really like to have lots of buildings and all this stuff. I hate this. I don't want to do Beastmen. Like, I don't like this.
What if your color is a razor pencil?
Yeah, yeah. Open new horizons. Your color is transparent.
My color is transparent.
My color is alpha setting.
Yeah. If you like that, then Beastmen are for you.
Yeah, like I think there's just kind of that's just kind of an unavoidable aspect of the game, is that there are going to be people that, like, they're going to see Cathay and they're going to try and they're going to go, not for me.
That's everyone's got that. I mean, like, some of the was it High Elves are on average the most played race, but there are some people that just like hate the High Elves. They just refuse to play them, and they're like the High Elves got some of the best gifts, arguably the strongest race currently in Total War Warhammer. But some people just hate them. This is not for them. And the High Elves have the most viable options. That, like, you could almost pick any unit in their roster apart from melee infantry and run with it.
Yeah, I mean, just based on the way, like, people tend to be, it's very, very likely that either Cathay or Kislev will be the most popular faction in Warhammer 3. Not because they're the best or they have the most options, but I think that's just where, like, the average player is going to gravitate towards.
Yeah, you're probably right.
I don't know why. It's just what they do. Like, the most people, like, the vast majority of an audience seems to gravitate, at least in a Warhammer setting. In Warhammer 1 and 2, they tend to gravitate towards, like, the most human good guy faction with the most basic mechanics.
It's not just Warhammer.
It's like Reichland, and then you get Lothern, and then you get Kislev / Cathay. It's just like people like to play the good guys.
Yeah,
which is why Skaven are so popular. So anyway, go on. Sorry.
It's not just Warhammer. It was actually there was a study going out with MMOs, interestingly enough, where stuff like World of Warcraft and some others were put into it, and they showed in the study that the grand majority of the player base is either with a human or a human-like character.
How boring!
It's just
how boring.
I just want to point out something out about the Skaven. Do you know which race in Total War Warhammer the most heroic race is the one who kills the most Skaven?
That's a very specific measurement.
Yeah, it just so also happens to be the Skaven.
Yeah.
This advertisement brought to you by Team Skaven.
Yeah.
All right, so the next thing we've got for Cathay is the Whooshing Compass. So the Whooshing Compass is a mechanic that allows you basically have a cooldown timer and you get this fancy compass thing that you can point at one of 4 places. And when you point at a place, it will build up magic that makes its passive buff stronger, which the passive buffs slowly degenerate over time. And then it has an active buff that's only active when you're directly pointed at that particular place, being the Great Bastion, the Celestial Lake, the Warpstone Desert, and the Dragon Emperor himself or his wrath. Seems like a very straightforward mechanic. It's basically just a pick a power up for a certain amount of turns, and by going through the tech tree or fully upgrading the Great Bastion, you reduce the cooldown timer so you can switch it around faster, which will be probably a significant power up because it provides global buffs through its passives. So the faster you can change the needle, the more often you can keep the ones that have passives at full in order to have the most powerful buffs that you can.
Well, from what we can see here, look at the Celestial Lake. Growth +3!
Yeah.
In Cathay, all Cathay factions. Whoa, do you know how much growth you need to get to tier 5? 2,000!
Yeah, they're definitely not crazy looking at the moment. It'll be. I'm curious if they look like they're at a halfway point, but I'm curious if the meter goes all the way empty, or if the halfway point's like the second lowest. Maybe.
Yeah, when it goes to full, it's like +5.
Hopefully, it's a little bigger. But
I know it looks like that, but like, look at the Dragon Emperor's Wrath, right? Control +1 for Cathay, all Cathay factions, and that's halfway.
Oh, that's good
So,
stuff.
Do you get a
+1.
plus half, plus like 0.5 if?
Yeah.
Well,
Look at
I imagine
that
if it did.
Casualty replenishment rate +4%. One extra troop in all of your
I imagine if
turn.
it dips to the lowest level, you take penalties. I would assume, or it's just 0. It might just be 0 at the lowest.
You could
level.
be right about that.
And hopefully, if it's at the highest level, it's like substantially bigger and doesn't just go up by +1. Hopefully, it's up by a multiplier, not an addition. But it's definitely not like the most engaging mechanic, but it does have some interest. Like, it does seem like there will be times, especially for the active buffs, where you'll have to think like, do I really want to like try and pump attrition into enemy armies? Do I want to do this other thing? Like, there are
dilemmas. Needs more dilemmas.
Needs more dilemmas. Speaking
I
of dilemmas, I mean,
this.
it looks like an interesting system. I wouldn't say that it's like game breaking, but you know, it adds. It's just another cherry to have on top of your Cathay cake.
No, funny enough, I actually like this, though. I know CA will never add it in, so we need a modder to do it. So any modders listening to this, when the game comes out, please think of this video. Could you just have a roulette so we could just click it and it will randomly?
Oh, that's racist. That's very Chinese.
No, I kind of like the
Gambling.
idea of just some random
Legend,
drop.
please.
Instead of going on Great Bastion or Celestial Lake or just picking one, just go click, and whichever one it falls on, you can stay there, just for like a challenge.
Oh, it's like I mean, you could just roll a dice or something. Why do you want a mod of spinning?
I want a mod for that.
You just want to spin the wheel. You're like, I just gotta.
Yeah, spin the wheel.
Yeah.
Call up Bob Barker. Let him know it's time for me to spin
exactly
the whooshing compass.
Warhammer China needs is a gambling mechanic.
They're already pretty much bringing in the communism into it. Let's just be honest.
All right, now we're going too far.
I'm just saying.
Behave, children. All right, so next we've got the Ivory Road. This mechanic got a lot of people excited. I'm one of those people. I'm actually really interested in the Ivory Road. So the Ivory Road, for anyone that hasn't read it, is basically that you will have the ability to recruit trade caravans. And these caravans apparently try to go to the Empire. So they basically travel the Ivory Road and, well, I don't know if they necessarily go to the Empire. Maybe they can go the Spice Road and go to End as well. But they travel the Ivory Road to get somewhere, trade with somebody, and then come back. However, they are not simply a, like, you click it and then it's done. There is actually a physical army that appears on the map that travels automatically. You don't have control over it at all, but it moves across the map, and you will get dilemmas, of course, that allow you to pick specific routes. And you can also buy like upgrades, and they have specific lords that will have a skill tree that you can buff them to help them out. And your goal is to try and find safe routes to wherever it is you're trying to trade while avoiding getting your caravans attacked. But because they are actually traveling armies, they can actually be attacked, which means this mechanic is actually very interesting for enemy players as well as Cathay players. What are y'all's thoughts on it?
It's very context heavy. Like we just need to see how it behaves. Like, it kind of reminds me of like a way better version of the interception armies from the Vortex campaign, where you just like spawn an army and you just can't have control over it. Whereas this definitely seems better, but it just depends. It also kind of reminds me of the Empire dilemmas that occur when an elector count is under attack and you have a choice about how you want to defend them, which it's barely a choice. Sometimes it's very easy to defend them and you feel like, oh, this is an easy one, you're given sufficient amount of force. Sometimes the battle is outright impossible because the amount of troops that you get is so little, and your allies will not coordinate with you at all, and you just can't get to them in time. It's like literally impossible. So it can be very frustrating when those events occur. Just depends if they're going to do that with this and how much thought they put into it.
Yeah,
Which, sorry, go on.
I was gonna say is that I really hope they allow a lot of customizations, like as far as like how you design the
Yeah.
caravan. Like, okay, do you want to invest to have like a really powerful army? Like, what units do you want to put in it? Stuff like that. Hopefully, you have some like a good level of control over that, and it's not just spawn a random stack,
Yeah,
which could have
the
anything
more
in it.
control, the better, and the more random, the worse it is.
Yeah, I agree.
The less when they do this stuff like this and there's an element that's out of your control, they do have a habit of occasionally throwing such a huge curveball at it that you couldn't possibly deal with it. And that can be very frustrating when they do that kind of stuff, and it's just oversight or just lack of balancing it.
Yeah, well, and hopefully they learn from the Vortex, because I mean the Vortex I would say is not, I don't know if I would say 100% universally, but I would say the vast majority of the community is not a fan of it or outright hates it. Like the actual Vortex race, and it's because it's so random. It is immensely random in that not only is it just a slow slog, but you're dealing with like all of these armies that spawn. You have no idea where they're going to spawn. They're very difficult to predict. Like the AI can spawn intervention armies on your capital like anytime, and it's stupid because you have
Yeah,
zero control.
it punishes the player for doing the main mission. If you ignore because if you like at the very earliest opportunities do the various missions, you lose diplomatic relations with the other races, right? And you can keep accumulating more of that resource. So you don't have to do any of the Vortex missions until you're completely finished with your race. And another thing is if somebody finishes the actual Vortex, um, usually what ends up happening, let's just say you're playing as High Elves and Nagarond finishes. All the other factions declare war on Nagarond, right? And everyone's dogpiling on them, and you haven't even done the first Vortex, and then you have this option to finish them off at the final Vortex. If you focused on yourself at the beginning and you actually have a good army, you can easily knock that army out because you team up with the other races and you just knock them out of the race completely. You don't even have to play the Vortex. There's so many things in there that just is just like you are punished for playing it. Like the rewards you get for finishing your Vortex missions are not worth the entirety of the other Vortex races like dogpiling on you, and they'll send intervention races and everything at you.
Yeah, Vortex is definitely a good showcase of what not to do.
Yeah.
And hopefully that lesson continues to stick. But yeah, I am very curious to see this mechanic in action, because if they do it right, it could be a lot of fun. Like I really like choose your own adventure kind of little stories, so kind of having like a sub choose your own adventure thing where you have this caravan, you're just telling it kind of vaguely where to go when they encounter problems and try to figure out solutions, like, oh, this road is blocked, which way do we go now, and stuff. I'm curious how much it will interact with the actual campaign map, as far as like, okay, my caravan has to go through the mountains of Morn. So is that going to incentivize me to be allies with the ogres so that they don't attack my caravan because we're friends? And does it de-incentivize me to like not be at war? Or if I'm going to be at war, make sure I'm like guarding them with another army as it goes through these dangerous lands, or make sure I take these territories so that they're going through my lands. Because if I'm enemies with these factions, are they going to like come down and try and attack the caravan and kill it? Because we know if you're not playing as Cathay, you can absolutely attack a Cathayan caravan, which will of course piss them off, but you can steal lots of goodies from it, which I think is honestly going to be I think Cathay will be very popular for head-to-head campaigns because of that mechanic. But depending on how it's utilized, if it's utilized well, I think it'd be very fun.
You play as
Who knows
Fezzik
if they're
and
even going to
how-
have head-to-head campaigns in Warhammer 3? They might just delete multiplayer entirely.
Oh yeah, that would go over great. You know
All
what
the
everyone's
people
favorite
hoping.
thing is? Removing features.
Oh yeah, people are always for it. Like nobody cares about naval battles. We never hear about that, and we
Yeah.
never hear about full-player co-op.
Yep.
I don't know
Yep.
what you're talking about.
Never heard of them. Avatar Conquest, not a thing. Never heard of it.
Never happened.
Nathan, what were you gonna say?
Never happened.
Sorry, he's just taking me back to naval battles, and I'm just. It really pisses me off.
It's another world. It's another world, man.
Yeah.
Do you have anything to say about the Ivory Road? You look like you were gonna say something a minute ago.
I mean, it's fun. It's look. I'll be very honest with you. When it comes to these things, until I see gameplay, I just can't get hyped up too much and so on. Like,
Yep, I feel exactly the same way. I mean, I like that we actually get some information about this, whereas the cinematic battles that they do, which I just call trailers, I can't get hyped about them at all because they literally tell us nothing. Whereas this does actually give us some information. It's not the full picture; we don't know everything, and it's missing a lot of context. But at least we have something, and it is starting to build something of an idea of what the campaign is going to be like with Warhammer 3, because we've only gone through 3 out of essentially 7 of the starting races faction mechanics.
however, what worries me is that this is a thing because I'm looking at it from a fan point of view. When we saw the trailers for Warhammer 1, we saw artillery on walls.
Yeah,
you saw that in a cinematic. This is the thing, you can never trust cinematics from CA. You just can't trust it. It's just like all the cinematic tells you is that this game is being developed. That's it.
Yeah. And like the war machines on walls, like as long as they're designing the cities so my artillery could shoot over the wall, which they're doing now, I don't really care.
Are they? Because that Tzeentch battle thing, you can see the Cathay artillery hitting its own wall.
Well, I mean, it's also like a firework type unit that shoots like that. But like, so are you gonna hit your own stuff? Probably, but
it's very, it's historically authentic.
Like friendly fire is a thing you got to deal with war machines. That doesn't bother me at all.
Oh yeah, but like the fact that they showed that off in a trailer, where like that's always been an issue. Like, how many times will you take artillery to a siege defense?
Well, for me, it depends on how I'm going to be able to make them work. Like,
depends on the type of the artillery, yeah.
Yeah, if they've got like, hey, here's a nice hill that's going to let my cannons fire over the wall, and it's not on the wall. I like at first I really wanted artillery on the walls, but the more I think about it, the more I realize that it'd probably be a stupid thing, because the thing is the walls are just the first wave, and if you could put your artillery on the wall, it would probably be stuck, or at the very least it's not going to be able to retreat in time when you need it to, and the enemy just climbs up the wall and kills it instantly. If I've got it further back in the city, as long as I can shoot over the wall, because there's now elevation in cities, and then when they come through, it's now firing at the people that are coming through, because the sieges are going to revolve mostly around once you're past the wall, that's fine. Like, that's better, in my opinion.
Yeah, the siege rework is not utilizing walls at all. I think CA has recognized that they have goofed up with walls big time, and they're just like, okay, walls are not a thing of Warhammer 3. They're just like the first hurdle, and it's becoming more about the second, third, fourth hurdle after that. It's more about fighting in the streets, not about fighting in the walls.
Yeah, I'd agree.
They screwed it up with Warhammer 1. They're just moving straight on to fighting in the streets, which is currently how most battles should be fought in Warhammer 2, if you fight in the city.
You just stay in your zone of control, and that's it.
Yeah, because if you were going to do fighting on the walls, they'd have to add, like you'd have to have stuff you could do. Because that's the thing, is that you can't do anything on a wall. Like, you can't dump oil, you can't sap walls, there's no interactions.
Every single infantry unit can just pull out butt ladders.
Yeah, so because there's no, like, dynamic battle system on the walls, that's what they had to decide going into 3. Like, when they're doing the siege rework, they had to decide, are we going to make the walls more dynamic, or are we going to just make the cities a lot bigger, make the cities dynamic, and fight in the cities? And they went with the cities option.
Still think you should have the option to fight on the wall, though. Like,
You can. It's just not.
You can if that's the wall you want to die on.
no, but I'm just saying, they go, oh yeah, we're gonna make sieges better. Well, you know, why not add in some boiling oil and stuff like that? Not only was it used in real life, but it was also
Yeah,
used
you
in
can just use
Warhammer.
boiling oil magic.
Boiling oil, right?
Yeah, just that's what warp lightning is. It's just boil
Yeah.
oil the spell.
No, but it
Yeah.
would be nice. It would be nice.
It
'cause-
would be nice, but like it's that eternal thing of there's only so much that can be done. There's only so much resources. There's only so much time. There's only so much money, and I think for having to make an entire game that like I think they've made mention of like we don't know how many reworks are in this game, but we know the magic system's being reworked, spells are being reworked, sieges are being reworked. There's new battle systems. Diplomacy's probably being reworked based on that
they
Tzeentch
could
stuff.
run that.
We've got what 6 or 7 new base races that are all very different and have completely unique mechanics. Like something's got to give, man. And if the wall's got to give, that's a sacrifice I think they did the smart thing on.
Yeah, no, what they should have done was merged all mono gods into one race and made walls viable instead. That would have been a better use of their resources. So yeah, instead
Well-
of launching with 6 races, we'll have 3 but walls.
Well, we're probably
And
going to
naval
have
battles. In naval
And
battles,
naval battles.
in a mostly landlocked area.
we're probably going to have a chaos undivided faction with Be'lakor anyway. So we're already getting
Yeah.
that. It's just
Like
it would be
don't get
nice
me
to
wrong.
get some stuff to like try something different.
Yeah, don't get me
Because at
wrong.
the end of the day,
I get the desire. Like I'm totally there with you. If they could have done it, I would have loved it. But I think like we're kind of at the point that we got to focus on what we are getting and not worry as much about the stuff
Yeah,
that
that's true.
it's we're past this, dude. Like we're so far past this.
oh, it's
Yeah.
fine. It's fine. I'm just saying because obviously the game is sold well. It still gets a high player base through what it's 20,000 a day more or less on Steam.
Mm.
It's still
It's gone down a little bit. I can check right now. It has gone down because people are sort of switching off a little bit. Currently has 21,500 people playing it.
still not
Not
too
bad.
bad. I don't know, man. It's just I expected a little bit more, but then again, we haven't seen the Siege rework proper. We
Hey,
saw cinematics.
Troy has 600 people playing it.
Why you gotta do Troy like that?
Troy did Troy like that. It's not my fault.
Just drag him into this.
I like.
He's already
Troy.
dead. Just leave him alone.
I like Troy. I honestly like Troy. I think Epic killed Troy though. The decision for Epic is what killed Troy because I think
Oh, like that decision was like the best financial decision that they could have
It was
made.
great-
That
it was great for
that
Warhammer 3.
That was golden, and it was great for Total War in general. It was shit for Troy. Troy was it's like they
Troy-
killed that game, but it was like great for Total War because it's just a really really good decision.
Troy
It
died for
wasn't
our
good
sins.
for Troy.
Troy
Yeah.
died for our sins.
yeah. What about Three Kingdoms?
I don't know what's going on over there. We'll hear about
You
it at
just
some
have to
point.
wait for Three Kingdoms too.
Three Kingdoms, the kingdoming.
Yeah.
All right,
I
and
can't wait for Three Kingdoms 3.
the last thing to kind of just briefly touch on with Cathay is, of course, their tech tree, which we already really covered in Harmony, and of course the Great Bastion. So we've had it confirmed that the Great Bastion is basically a giant impenetrable wall that has 3 fortresses built into it, and those 3 are the only ways that it can be crossed.
I really, it's only 3. I thought there'd be at least 5. But, okay.
Yeah, well, they make mention that there's more, but apparently only 3 of them are playable. I don't know if that's because like maybe the rest of them are off the map or something, or what the deal's gonna be. DLC. Yeah. What do you want? More Great Wall? We got that.
Yeah, Great Wall DLC. Now you get double Great Wall.
Yeah, we got what, the Turtle Gate, the Snake Gate, and the something Gate.
Dragon Gate.
Dragon Gate. Basically, it looks very similar to the Tor Yivris map, with some new additions with the mechanics from the survival battle system. But it does have a pretty fun little building tree. Does have a it of the like siege specific things out there compared, so like the high elf gates and the empire forts. It definitely has the most interesting system in that you actually can build stuff and you can make decisions. And it seems that the Cathay campaign is going to revolve very heavily around, at least the Miao Yin campaign is going to revolve very heavily around defending these and trying to get them to max level, because you get some rather significant campaign buffs if you're at max level. Most notably, being able to activate the Wuxing Compass quicker. I mean, it looks interesting. It's not like the most amazing thing in the universe, but I am glad to see that forts are getting more dynamic building trees, and I hope this means we get more dynamic building trees on some of the other forts in the future, like the High Elf Gates and the Empire forts. But for what it is, I'm honestly pretty pleased with it.
Yeah, I mean, we have to see how it actually functions in the game, but it's a better foundation than what we currently have for forts. I mean, I wasn't expecting anything more than just one build slot that you just upgrade. Do you remember how the High Elf Gates actually used to have 6 build slots, and you used to be able to build military buildings there, and then they took it away?
Yep. Yeah, they made it where it's
yeah.
just the garrison building.
Yeah.
Which is a bummer, and hopefully that's something they go back and change. Because I mean, it doesn't even have like unique buildings would be cool to just like spice up its defensive capabilities, but just being able to do something besides build the basic building is always very nice.
Yeah.
But yeah, that pretty much wraps up Cathay. So I feel like I already know the answer to this, but I'll ask anyway. So of the factions that have been revealed so far, which are y'all kind of leaning the most heavily towards?
Corn.
Corn.
I'm just kidding. No. I think Tzeentch. Yeah.
What? Legend pickings? I never would have thought.
Yeah.
Legend picking? I never would have thought. Nathan, who are you kind of looking towards? Like, who's winning your pageantry contest right now? From what we've seen so far. So Slaanesh is not available yet.
Tzeentch, probably. The thing is, look, Cathay's cool and all, but just doesn't speak to me. Kislev has been so radically changed that this is not the Kislev that I was interested in. And at least Tzeentch has kept to everything. I like the look of Tzeentch. I like the look of what we've seen so far. I'm curious about those cultists, if they're going to be like a unit or a hero.
We've had it confirmed they're heroes in the Khorne roster. Yeah, because the Khorne roster, the only mortal character Khorne has is the Cultist of Khorne.
Right. So then, yeah, I mean, they're cool. I like the look of them. I like the little jelly babies, you know, the pink horrors and the blue horrors.
Curious to see what they're going to do about when they die. Whether it'll like, do you know what I reckon it'll do? I reckon if a pink horror dies, it'll be like if the Hell Pit Abomination dies, it spawns 2 other units, but they're temporary. They're like summoned units.
Yeah, hopefully they do that. I think that would be the smart way to do it. And the barrier system looks fun. The fact that the Tzeentch units have like a secondary health bar is kind of cool.
Well, that's just their natural ward, isn't it? So.
Well, like they have like a second health bar.
Yeah,
you can see one of the footages that
we really don't know exactly how that functions right now. I mean,
yeah,
that there's loads of different ways that could work.
Yeah, the only mention we have of it is that it has some kind of meter, and it is a health bar because there are ways you can make it bigger. But we don't know if it like blocks everything, or if there's certain things that get through it, or what it's going to be on that. But yeah, okay. And personally, I'm leaning towards, I think, Cathay for my first playthrough. I'm really enjoying the looks of their mechanics so far. But I'm really hoping the Ivory Road turns out to be fun, because that looks like it could be an absolute blast. But anything else that y'all wanted to discuss before we wrap up for today?
Honestly, with everything that's looking here, it's looking good in terms of main factions. I'm curious to see what will happen with Slaanesh and Nurgle, and hopefully Ogres, you know, if they ever get confirmed. if they'll be as detailed with loads of
Yes.
different things.
Soon there won't be an early adopter bonus. There'll be the late adopter bonus.
Yeah. But like, it would be curious to see, because I'm starting to think as to how ogres can be so intricate. I mean, you know as well as I do in terms of army book, they
Have
were pretty
layers.
well in the
Thank you,
most
Legend.
honest way. In the most honest way, on the tabletop, it was the most dumbed down faction. It was literally just get a ball of flesh, throw it at the enemy, fuck it. You don't need to think. No tactics needed. And then I'm trying to think as to how that could work for mechanics. I mean, we already know that they don't have walls. There was confirmation in in one of the places. I think it was actually the Great Bastion.
Yeah, it's on the Great Bastion. They make mention that Norska and ogres do not build walls.
Yeah. So it's like, well, some information would be nice. Obviously, we're going to get this eventually. You know, by that point, I've probably died of old age. But
I mean, there is a fairly popular prevailing theory that Grom, some of his mechanics maybe have been a test drive for the ogres as far as like collecting ingredients and cooking stuff for the Great Maw and yada yada. But we'll have to wait and see.
oh, yeah.
All right, so that's gonna be it for us today. Real quick, as we're doing the outro. Legend, thank you very, very much for coming by. We really appreciate you spending some time with us today and hanging out and chatting about.
No worries. Thanks for tolerating my smart ass.
We were delighted to have that smart ass in this room. It was glorious.
Okay, cool.
Any projects coming up or anything you want the people to know about as far as where they can find you and stuff?
No.
No, you're not gonna plug it all. No plug.
Nah, it's all good. I'm just taking it easy. I'll be
got
back
that hidden.
soon, TM.
There you go. Soon TM.
Soon TM, that's when I'm coming back.
Nathan, got any stuff coming up, and where can people find you and all that jazz?
Usual shit, YouTube, and watch me bitch on Twitter. T Grudges.
Yeah, I'm Loremaster of Sotek, of course, or Ryan, however you want to go by it. You can find me live most days at www.twitch.tv/Loremaster of Sotek. Also got a YouTube channel and on Twitter as well. We appreciate you all joining us. Me and Nathan will be back this upcoming Sunday for another episode of Lorebeards. And if I don't, maybe we'll have a special guest. I don't know. We'll figure it out. But thank you all so much for watching. I'm going to go ahead and hop out of the call so I can take care of some stuff with chat and talk to you all later. Thanks for being here, guys. Have a good one.